Good morning. We'll call this meeting of the House Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee to order. Clerk, please take the roll.
Representative Fritz.
Here.
Grills. Hardaway. Harris. Holsey. Hurt. Jones. Marsh. Martin. Reedy. Ritchie. Shaw. Travis. Vital. Wright. Vice Chairman Darby. Chairman Todd. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Welcome to everyone this morning, and we'll start out with a prayer and pledge of allegiance, and I'll ask Vice Chair Darby to lead us in that, please, if everybody would stand.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, thank you for this beautiful day you've given us, dear Lord. Dear Lord, just please be with this committee. Dear Lord, give us the wisdom and discernment there to make the right choices for this state. Dear Lord, thank you for all those in attendance today. Just continue to watch over and care for us. Forgive us where we failed you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Salute. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. This morning, I want to recognize any personal orders first off. Speaker Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to welcome the Dan Owens and the Lincoln County Student Advisory Board. You all please stand. Let's recognize you. Thank you very much for coming up today.
Thank you for being here. Representative Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to recognize Benjamin Gillette. He's my shadow today with the Eagle Forum, so I'd like to give him a warm welcome, please.
Representative Reedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Were you going to introduce the top 40 from Stewart County?
I'll let you do that, sir.
So today, of course, I represent Stewart County, so we have the Stewart County students here. Their top 40 students come with and visit with us each year. And of course, my job shadow is Emily Shepard. I'll have her stand up, and excited to have her from Stewart County High School. And then, of course, with her is Caleb. He's my intern. He's attending Trevecca, but to let you know in the audience, as well as the folks on the committee, our interns really do a great job for us, because I've been in a pinch a couple times and I turn to Caleb to get things done. So Miss Emily, at any time you want to be an intern, come see me. Make them feel welcome.
Thank you for that. I would like to recognize our veterinarians and veterinary students that are here visiting with us. If y'all would stand, we'd like to recognize you. This is their day on the Hill, and they've joined us in our committee. If you'll make them feel welcome. Thank you for being here and for what all you do for our communities. Representative Grills, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Caleb Studd, where are you? He's sitting here on the front row. He is my shadow today. He has a sister, Lainey, that's 8 years old. He's in the 7th grade at Coffee County Middle School. He plays golf, and he's a football player. His dad's a machinist, and his mom's a labor and delivery nurse. But it's good to have him here today, and we're hoping we'll teach him some good habits.
There you go.
Thank you for joining us. Wanted to recognize something very dear to my heart in this committee this morning. Surface waters within our great state include 29 reservoirs, major reservoirs, 19,000 miles of streams, and thousands of small lakes and ponds, which offer habitat for various fish species. With at least 315 fish species, 280 of them being native to this state, Tennessee has one of the most diverse collections of fish in North America. Over the next few weeks, I will spotlight different fish species within the borders of Tennessee, exploring their significance to the anglers in our communities and their neighbors. Trout can be found across Tennessee, most commonly in the streams of the eastern mountains and similar areas that contain the right flows and temperatures to support them. To provide quality experiences to anglers in the winter seasons, the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency has developed a stocking program which distributes trout to publicly accessible lakes and ponds across the state. Tennessee contains 4 different species of trout: the rainbow trout, lake trout, brown trout, and brook trout. Among these, the brook trout stands out as the only native trout residing in the around 150 streams and at elevations above 3,000 feet. For further information on the trout and the stocking processes of TWRA, visit their website. And this morning, we have a presentation. First on our list, we have the National Waste and Recycling Association. So to hear from them without Chairman Reedy.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I'd be remiss. It's, of course, Farm Bureau, basically day on the hill, and I've got Humphreys County and Benton County here. If you folks would stand up, but also Justin Hargrove is here, and he was the Farm Bureau Excellence in Ag Award winner. And Justin, good to have you, your dad here, as well as folks from Benton County and Humphreys County. Mr. Sam, I see you smiling back there. Stand up, say hi. Make them feel welcome.
Representative Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know there's several members from Farm Bureau. If you would, I know they're not necessarily in my county, but they're all friendly. So if you're from Farm Bureau, would y'all please stand so we can see who all is here from Farm Bureau?
Appreciate y'all being here. Thank you for that. So without objection, we're going to go out of order to, out of session to hear from the National Waste and Recycling Association. We are out of session. And if y'all would make your way up and in any order you want to go in, just introduce yourself and then you may start your presentation and we'll have some questions and answers, I'm sure, afterward.
All right, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, representatives. Thanks for having us back. I think hopefully most of you remembered we were here on kind of a quick turn execution there last time we presented. So as not to bore you with the same information twice, we're just gonna kind of ramp right through some of this information, hit the cliff notes as highlights, and then have as much time for questions as you'd like. Just to start off with some introductions. So my name is Mike Klassen. I am the chair of the Tennessee chapter of the National Waste and Recycling Association. And I'll let my colleagues here to my left introduce themselves.
Good morning, Chairman Todd. Oh, am I? Good morning, Chairman Todd. My name is Stacy Cothran, and I am with WM. And happy to my counterpart Andy Reynolds got stuck in traffic on the interstate, so I'm a fill-in. Happy to be here.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Kirk Sander. I'm the Chief of Staff and Vice President of Safety and Standards with the National Waste and Recycling Association. We represent over 700 waste and recycling companies and the supplier members that supply all of the equipment that those companies use throughout the United States. We also are the secretariat for the Z245 standard, that is the standard for waste and recycling equipment and operations in the country. And we, like Stacy and Mike said, we represent WM and Republic, but also we represent companies such as Rockwood Recycling, Raven, Reclaim, Raker, and Atomic Transport here in Tennessee. So we represent everything from the largest commercial fleet with WM to trucks to fleets with 1 and 2 vehicles. So we look forward to your questions. And that being, the industry currently employs just over 25,000 employees in Tennessee with a payroll just under $1.5 billion. And we're looking at about a revenue of $5 billion in the industry. So we are, and like we say, other than the Postal Service, we are probably the only other industry that drives up and down every road in the country every week.
And every Amazon truck now too. Right? Yeah. So we last time talked a lot about the community service, the sustainability initiatives, and some of the new technology that we're harnessing. So kind of skip those items, but certainly if there's questions about some of that at the end, those are things we're very passionate about that are very core to what we do as a business, and happy to talk about that as well. But wanted to focus on our really 3 what we would call legislative priorities or highlighting issues. Those are expansions of existing landfills. So really it comes down to disposal capacity for waste of our rapidly growing, it's an infrastructure need for our rapidly growing community, and the hurdles that we have with being able to expand or site new disposal locations here in the state. Also related to flow control, which is when local municipalities can limit disposal locations for private haulers and industry, which can distort the market for waste management services. And lastly is just tipping fees in general. So many of you probably know, but if not, we'll just refresh that. the state of Tennessee currently funds the solid waste division of solid waste management at TDEC using tipping fees on disposal. So the problem there is as landfills in the state reach capacity, as it's impossible to expand existing landfills, that trash is going to have to be hauled out of state when that currently the landfills are who pays that fee. So if the waste is being hauled out of state, those fees are no longer collected by the Division of Solid Waste Management, and we have a significant funding gap there at the state level for that division. So those are our three legislative priorities, but really the most pressing one, and the one we want to talk about today, is disposal capacity. We just want to start with a little bit of context and lay of the land. So this figure was produced by the Greater Nashville Regional Council, economic district here of the 13 counties here in upper and middle Tennessee. And this is an example. What's really important to point out is this is not a middle Tennessee problem. This is an all of Tennessee problem. And if you take one thing away from this graphic, it's this, is that waste and disposal capacity is a regional problem, which requires regional solutions. Waste doesn't respect boundaries, whether it's city boundaries or whether it's county boundaries. As you can see here on this graph, so the darker the color, the more waste those counties produce. And then all of the orange colored dots are the location of disposal facilities within this upper region of Middle Tennessee. What's important to point out is waste is going all over Middle Tennessee, but even within and outside the region, almost 30% of the waste generated within this upper region of Middle Tennessee, Greater Nashville area, 30% of that waste is sent elsewhere. So what happens is as this rapidly growing section of Tennessee continues to exhaust all of the existing disposal capacity that we have, the requirement is going to be to transport that waste farther and farther away, which creates a cascading effect and impact to other sections of other regions of Tennessee. And we're going to see the same problem propagating. So again, waste is a regional problem that requires a regional solution and some leadership from a regional or state level. So what exactly does that problem look like? This chart shows the amount, the number of years of landfill capacity within 150 miles of Greater Nashville and Middle Tennessee. And what that shows is we have about 5 years or less of remaining capacity, which in the world of solid waste and landfills, that's absolutely nothing. It takes about probably 4 to 6 years to permit a new facility, engineer it, get approval from the state, and build it. So we currently have a significant lack of regional disposal capacity, as well as no recycling programs to speak of, no mature recycling programs. So the amount of waste we're putting in landfills is excessive, and it's causing our infrastructure to quickly reach capacity. So without a cohesive plan to solve the issue, we're quickly approaching what we call a disposal crisis with significant economic and social costs. So what does that issue look like specifically? The current local approvals process provides what we call local governments a triple veto power. There's, of course, zoning, there's, of course, the Jackson Law, and then there's also the regional board and planning process. And that process has acted as a really an impassable roadblock for vital economic infrastructure regional solutions. And it's a problem that's unique to Tennessee. One thing I think it's really important for me to stop and emphasize is local approval is really important. And it's no secret that those that live closest to landfills are disproportionately impacted by having to live so close to them. That said, we currently have multiple sections of code that are conflicting with one another and result in a process that nobody knows how to navigate and nothing can get done. So we're sort of mired in regulatory red tape, and there's no ability to produce disposal capacity this region so desperately needs. So with that, I know I blazed through that pretty quickly, but want to be respectful of all of your time. We're happy to take any questions. Thank you.
We really appreciate you abbreviating it, but you've put the most important information, it looks like, before us. It certainly reiterates concerns that many of us have had and that we're hearing from our communities, especially in Middle Tennessee. So certainly entertain questions from the committee. Representative Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate y'all coming today. As we look at the waste issue and space for waste issue that we have, do you think that new technologies, emerging technologies like cellulose to hydrogen conversion processes will help with some of the solid waste volume? And is there anything in the future that you all can talk to about that?
Sure.
Recognize.
Thank you. Really appreciate that question. What's important to emphasize about new technologies is right now they're all sort of black box technologies that have not been proven to work at scale. And when you're talking about the amount of waste a community generates, for example, Middle Point landfill will accept almost 4,000 tons of waste every single day. That amount of volume coming in, the technology just simply doesn't exist currently to be able to accommodate that. However, we have a lot of really large Fortune 500 companies doing business here with teams of people focusing every single day. I think Stacy would agree from Waste Management's perspective and Kirk from NWRA. We're not landfill companies. We're companies that manage recycling and waste and want to be drivers of sustainability. So as those opportunities and technologies come forward, we'll be on the forefront of implementing them.
Representative Fritz.
Thank you so much. One follow-up. I heard atomic transport mentioned, I think. So is that for radiological waste or is that just a name?
That's just a name.
It's just a very confusing name. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Great.
But Representative Fritz, I'll just jump in and add on to what Mike said. But WM, we have recently, one of the issues is that we've had with recycling is building, the infrastructure needs to come and be here. And we've recently, built a new C&D recycling facility at our Southern Services facility in West Nashville. And that's going to be an important piece of this answering all the issues that we have, is building those facilities and that infrastructure to be able to recycle more products within our state.
Mhm. Mhm.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here. Interesting. My colleague kind of hit on what I wanted to ask, but given the technology piece, what part of the process of dealing with waste that technology cannot handle? Because I think that's going to be the critical piece in the future. So what do we need to be looking at to deal with this issue when it comes to what technology will not be able to do?
So I think to answer your question, I would break that into two parts. There's, even with the best technology in the world, there is always going to be a residual that has to go to a landfill. And so we have to, as collectively, solve our problem with availability of disposal capacity in Middle Tennessee and the state more broadly. That's number one. And I think that can be changed through a change in some of the existing regulations and what that approval process looks like, who has a seat at the table, what are the different steps and how that happens. So I think that's first. Second is, there's a space in between landfill and converting to energy, and that space is recycling. And I think from a recycling standpoint, Stacy really pointed out a good one, which is the construction and demolition debris, pulling that out of the waste stream, having a place for that to go. Also, the availability of existing recycling programs, curbside recycling programs for homes and businesses. That's an absolute focus where I think everyone has seen the rankings there. Hate to be at the bottom of list, but where the state of Tennessee ranks 48th among all states when it comes to recycling and the percentage of waste that's coming in. That's a stat. We're better than that as a state and as a community. And certainly, with leadership on from your perspective and from here as corporate leaders, that's something we need to do better on.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is the problem more critical in Middle Tennessee than the rest of the state? We keep focusing on Middle Tennessee. So is this where the problem is more critical?
Yes, that's exactly right. The problem is most critical in Middle Tennessee, really driven by the growth that Middle Tennessee has seen. It's an infrastructure problem first and foremost. Places, West Tennessee has availability of other disposal facilities out of the state. And certainly East Tennessee is seeing similar issues, but they also have the ability to haul out of state, a little bit more difficult here in Middle Tennessee. So this is certainly where the primary issue is coming to a head at.
Representative, okay. Representative Hardaway?
Thank you, Chairman, and welcome to our guests. I found it interesting. You helped me to get it organized in my head when you said landfill energy and in between is recycling. So I think that's the way I'll approach it for now. And it stirred a couple of questions. One is whether, and this is to all of you, whether the way that your companies are organized, whether you segment these or whether they're seamless in the way that you address them. And the other is about workforce. What is our current workforce impact on Tennessee, and what are the future workforce needs? Thank you.
Stacey, you want to start there?
Well, I'll start with part of it. I mean, I work for WM, and I think everybody knows us as Waste Management. I jokingly have told everybody we're now letters, not words. And that's because we are moving in a direction where sustainability is a big part of what our company does, not just landfills, and recycling and the technology that we are offering, not just, across the country. That is the direction we're going. And that's why our corporate leaders made the decision to change from Waste Management to WM, because we are moving in the direction of sustainability. And that's making a change in where we're going. And just like all of our recycling facilities, we have two MRFs here in Nashville. We have our new, as I spoke of, we have our new recycling facility, C&D recycling facility in West Nashville. And, building this infrastructure to help bring those volumes in so that we are not taking up landfill airspace is an important part of what we're doing. I'll let Mike, you speak about the employees and that part of it.
Sure. And just to put another point on Stacey, so my other hat outside of NWRA is I'm the general manager for Republic Services here, which of course is Middle Point Landfill, but also landfills in Bradley County, Loudoun County, and elsewhere in the state of Tennessee. And she talked really nicely about waste and recycling. The other segment of Republic's business is called Sustainability Innovations. So one such project is at Middle Point Landfill, we're installing a facility which converts the gas that's produced as waste decomposes. It's called landfill gas, but 40% to 50% of landfill gas is methane, the same things that are in your pipelines going to your home as natural gas. So we're converting landfill gas into renewable natural gas, enough energy for 80,000 homes per year, clean, low-cost energy for the citizens of Rutherford County. Those are the types of sustainability and new technology initiatives that we're really leveraging. The other piece is when we talk about recycling. Most of us think we throw our plastic bottle in the recycling bin, and it gets recycled, and everything is just a beautiful process. What actually happens is those things get downcycled, right? It goes from plastic bottle to vacuum cleaner to carpet to landfill. And that's the stage of plastics because of how the recycling process works. So one focus area of Republic's is we built what's called polymer centers. The nearest one is going in Indianapolis currently, where we're taking existing like plastic bottles, converting them back into raw material, which can then be upcycled or truly recycled back into food grade plastics or other types of plastics. So we talk about how we're implementing technologies and how our business is segmented. That's kind of what that looks like.
Thank you, Representative Hardaway.
And the workforce?
Yeah, maybe can you repeat that question? I'm sorry, we got too chatty and totally missed it. So.
I can take the workforce. I mean, in terms of workforce, my safety committee, I was saying I was going to go get my CDL to understand what our drivers go through. And they said, don't tell us if you get it, because we'll start asking you to do shifts. We have probably a coming crisis of lack of CDL drivers, also mechanics. And as NWRA, we've started an apprenticeship program that WM and Republic are part of, trying to attract more and more people to the industry. It's not, you're not lugging cans and getting super dirty. I mean, we have one company who has a 70-year-old driver who drives every day, and his kids are like, "Hey, when are you going to stop driving?" And he goes, "Well, my boots are just as clean when I leave as when I get here, and I play with it, and I use a joystick all day because it's an automatic side load." He goes, "I have to apologize to my kids for all the times I gave you a hard time for playing video games. That's what I'm doing." So as we move with technology to automatic side loads and those, it's allowing our workers to be safer. But it's also allowing more people to come into the industry.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all.
Representative Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you brought up the MRF system and how that works. Just explain to us just real quick how that works and what the advantages of.
So in Nashville, we have 2 MRFs and we have a recycling. Oh, a MRF is where we, like, if you have your
Material
trash container and your recycle container, when that truck picks up the recycling container, it comes to our facility. And then we have a sorting line where plastics go here, metals go here, and then sadly there's contamination, but you pull that out, and that's the residuals that we were talking about. But then we will bale them up like cardboard. We'll bale that up, send that off to the processor where that's recycled further. We take the scrap to the scrap metal processor. So when it comes in and goes through the sorting lines, we appropriately sort that out and then send it on to be recycled again.
Representative Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when you do that, what is the actual diversion rate from what would have gone to a landfill to what actually goes to a landfill?
I honestly, I apologize. I
Okay.
don't know the number that's here in Metro off the top of my head. I apologize. So, but I mean,
It must be significant.
Yeah, nationwide is probably about 30 to 35%
Diversion or actually that actually makes it to the landfill?
diverted from the landfill.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is there a future in that technology that it could be even more, focused and more, maybe raise those 30 to 35% up to 60 or 70%?
well, and I'll speak to our new C&D recycling facility that we've just built in West Nashville. We're at like a 35% recycle rate, but as we can improve upon sorting out as materials come in, our ultimate goal is to get to 60 to 65% so that the residuals that have to be landfill, our goal is to reduce that as much as possible.
So if we wanted to take that technology and duplicate it across the state, what are the drawbacks? What are the roadblocks that would prevent those technology from being everywhere in Tennessee rather than just in the metropolitan area of Nashville?
I think the first roadblock is cost. So
Okay, and what is that?
Well, like our C&D facility that we just built, we had invested $20 million in that, building that facility.
And I think when you talk about some of the challenges, it's you have to make the investment, but you have to have the volume and the tonnage of material to process to make that investment worth it. So where we see some of the challenge, a lot of times we have quality recycling programs in the large metro centers, large urban areas, but where that gets let behind is communities that are 25,000, 50,000, 100,000 people. They just don't have the necessary mass of people to make those investments worth it. Now, there's actually some companies in Tennessee that are going exclusively robotic, using optical imaging and sorting, robotic sorting, and they call it community recyclers. And those are designed to be fully automated and put them in those smaller communities so we can get recycling programs into those smaller communities. And I think that's where the opportunity truly is. The technology is pretty good. I think it's pulling out everything that we can, getting better participation and more widely available programs. To me, that's where the real opportunity lies.
Would you agree that the solid waste disposal in America is so inexpensive that we somehow take it for granted, sometimes take it for granted, or all the time take it for granted?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because in Europe, it costs much more
Right.
per ton to dispose of it. And
Yeah.
because we have, it's very inexpensive here, we kind of just take what's.
Sure. I mean, look at Rutherford County, for example. So, for the citizens of Rutherford County, as the host county to Middle Point landfill, they have free disposal at the landfill. So where is the incentive to recycle and to really elevate and modernize the waste management program if it's exclusively free to be able to dispose? So I certainly agree. The incentives are a bit misplaced. But people have to be willing to pay for it too. And I think that's an important conversation to be having.
Think y'all come up with a good idea and a good plan and bring it to us. Maybe we get something done. Thank you.
Well, and I'd like to extend an invitation if anybody would like to come to either our MRFs, either one of our MRFs in Nashville or our new C&D recycling facility in West Nashville. We would love to offer a tour to any of you. So we're very proud of it.
Thank you for that invitation. Representative Halsey, we're going to let you wrap up for us.
Thank you very much. I was just going to point out, in Kingsport, which is my district, Tennessee Eastman Company has developed the same kind of system where they reduce those kinds of waste right down to their molecular level when they started, and they rebuild after that, which is part of what you're talking about. And Chairman Grills said we take things for granted. I was going to say my grandmother used to make marble pie, and we always took it for granted.
Thank you.
Feel free to respond if you want.
Love marble pie. All right.
It's usually a mic drop moment when he finishes, yes. Well, again, we thank you for being here. I know this is the second time scheduled, and we appreciate you being able to show up today and share this information with us. And we look forward to having you involved in conversations coming up, I think, later this year to figure out more solutions for these problems. So thank you again for being here with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
without
you.
objection, we'll go back into session. We are now in session, and we have item of business first before us, House Bill 1054 by Representative Vaughn. We have a motion and a second. And where we left this before, we were debating an amendment. I believe we had a motion and a second on an amendment by Representative Vital. Representative Vital, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, because of the fact that I understand that House Bill 1054, which is Senate Bill 631, has gone to summer study in the Senate, I'd like to withdraw amendment number 3. From what I understand, the TDEC commissioner committed on record to facilitate a real summer study between now and next session to give us a good bill to pass next year. I think the House should be at the table during that discussion. Mr. Chairman, what does this committee need to do to be at the table during that discussion?
Thank you for that, sir. Without objection, that amendment is withdrawn. It's withdrawn. Now we're back on the bill. And Representative Vaughn, I believe you have an amendment to put on yourself.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And in light of what my good friend from Hamilton County said, I guess this is a case of me running out of pop fly. My dad said, leave nothing to chance. You go on and finish the play. So today I'd appreciate if y'all would hang with me while we finish the play. This is an issue that is very important to me because I see firsthand what happens when there's bureaucratic overreach. I see how people's property rights are eroded. And I think we need to do what we can to rein in departments that participate in such things. And so what I've got is amendment 014537.
We have a motion and a second on that amendment. That rewrites the bill as I understand it. So we'll go ahead and put that on if you would like. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment goes on the bill. So you're recognized on the bill as amended, sir.
Thank you, sir. As we have discussed plenty in front of subcommittee and this committee before, what we see today in the regulatory landscape is that when it comes to wetlands determinations, that there is no difference given between things that happen in everyday life and actual swamps. When the Sackett decision came out of the Supreme Court, prior to that, in the state regulated this, but the feds led the way through the Corps of Engineers. And so whenever you would say, you would get aggravated at the rules you were having to follow as well, it's the feds. Well, 6 months ago, the feds got out of the isolated wetlands regulatory business. And our state is still regulating them the same way they would the Ghost River section of the Wolf River.
I know that there's been a lot of talk about the Harpeth River. All of these areas around here, a mud hole created by a four-wheeler is still regulated the same as a quality natural resource. What this does is this attempts to restructure the way things are looked at. And we, as I said the other day, we had over 4 hours of conversations with TDEC lawyers to get to a point where we could see the finish line. We couldn't get over it. Because again, when I made my commitment to Brother Shaw, I said we would try to get there, but we just could not get there. What this bill does is it sets aside a couple of different things. Number one is, the governor has a third party bill that has to do with construction and permitting. What this does is this sets aside a process very similar to that. It's a parallel track by which wetland determinations are done by private individuals. We do that already. It's just then you go into a negotiation phase with TDEC. Then it would rate wetlands based upon 3 categories. It would set aside 3 separate categories: low quality, moderate quality, and high quality. What this bill purports to do is in low quality wetlands, there's no permitting required for any activity in that low quality wetland. Moderate quality, there's no permitting required as long as the amount is less than 1 acre. And that we agreed to with TDEC. Well, last time we came through sub, it was 5 acres. And Chairman Halsey expressed some concern about how big 5 acres were. And so we brought that down to 1 acre in an attempt to reach out and make something happen on this. And so that's what our amendment does. I would appreciate your positive feedback on it. And my plans then would be to park it in finance and work on this fiscal note, because I can't believe the fiscal note is what it is, given the fact that what we charge TDOT for these isolated wetlands. And so anyway, and I understand there's been a lot of pushback from this, because there's, when you're trying to fight something, you throw a lot of stuff up against the wall, hoping something's going to stick. I didn't bring back my professional engineer who was going to give us a mini lesson in what causes flooding and what doesn't. We didn't do that today, just because of the state that we find ourselves in. But I know I've gone over, Mr. Chairman. I'll be happy to answer any questions that someone may have.
Okay. I do know we have some folks that are on the list from last week to testify. We can take those up now, or we can ask some questions and then take them up. What's the pleasure of the committee? Go out of session and hear from our witnesses? Okay, we'll do that first. And if we have any, I've not double checked to see if those folks are here, but without objection, we'll go out of session. And first on the list, I see Britt Kirby. Is Mr. Kirby here? All right, next we have Justin Murdoch. All right, Macy Flaherty. Would you like to testify? There's a little button that looks like a side of a face with some voice projection on it. If you click that, pull the microphone down so we can hear you. Introduce yourself, tell us who you're with, and you'll have 3 minutes to testify, and then we can have questions or answers if we want to. You're recognized.
Thank you. My name is Macy Fluharty. I'm a Davidson County resident. When I saw this bill, I was shocked to see legislation introduced that seemingly takes the Department of Environment and Conservation out of wetland conservation process. This bill was brought up last year, yet our departments did not do their due diligence to address this issue this bill aims to fix. I'm not sure what type of effort was given to follow up with TDAC, but now that year is asked to defer is up, and it looks like this legislature wants to push this bill that could have serious unintended consequences, even with the current amendment. Relying on federal government to classify local land could result in time delays or misclassification should federal entities misjudge our unfamiliar land. We should continue to use our local government to do their job, especially considering they know the nuances of our wetlands. I would like to know how involved TDAC will be, if at all, in the case that this bill passes. If a wetland is not protected, it can be removed or built on top of. The Department of Environment and Conservation plays a key role in assuring this does not happen arbitrarily. Wetlands are home to fish and other wildlife vital to the health of our land. They prevent pollution and protect Tennessee's future irrigation and drinking water by recharging our aquifer. Wetlands absorb rainfall and flooding. Should we lose too much wetland property, this could be detrimental to our state. Cities can flood, leading to structural damage to our buildings, roads, and citizen property. Farmland can flood as well, which could kill crops and even damage the soil on a farmer's land. Just as well, a farmer's equipment and infrastructure can be damaged and livestock can drown. Wetlands are necessary for societies to stay above water, literally. It is important that we do not arbitrarily throw away even small critical wetlands, just as important as respecting property owner rights. To remove a key department from the process of classifying wetlands as wetlands is environmentally dangerous. Our Senate has called for a summer study. Our legislature should do its part in ensuring TDAC follows up on this study in a timely manner so we do not have to roll this bill for a third year. It would be a great idea for some members of this committee to be a part of this study as well. Please vote no on this bill and follow suit with the Senate to have a summer study on this issue. Tennessee deserves to keep our land, water, and crops safe. This bill threatens that safety. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any questions for our visitor? Representative Hardaway?
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, ma'am. The underground connections for what would otherwise appear to be isolated holes, do you have an opinion on that?
Ms. Fluharty?
That, in my opinion, is the type of wetland that I say our local government knows the nuances of. That is something that can be misjudged by federal government. That's my worry about.
Representative Hardaway?
So if the feds are not necessarily fully engaged on those, does that mean that we need to have local or state involvement to fully appreciate the impact of those underground systems?
Ms. Fluharty?
I would say it's pretty necessary. And like I said, wetlands, so wetlands they can have different things about them that classify them as wetlands, and that can be overlooked by a federal government that I think TDAC and local government would already be aware of to look out for.
Representative Hardaway?
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for being here with us. Next on our
Thank
list,
you.
I have Commissioner Salyers was available for questions, or if he prepared comments, we'll certainly hear from him at this point. Welcome, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I did not bring any prepared comments. I stand here to answer any questions that may come from the committee members.
Okay. We have any questions for the Commissioner? Speaker Marsh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know you know all about this proposal and you've been meeting on it for months probably. If the low quality wetlands, like Chairman Vaughn is suggesting, who determines that they're low or medium?
Well,
I'm sure
I
the
do
commissioner-
think we got really close with Chairman Vaughn, as he said, on a number of issues. And I think, and we built out some language in and around that. I think the place where we were separated was mainly on the acreage with respect to the low quality wetlands, where we did propose some smaller acreage or acreage amounts that were like up to 2 acres, something like that, versus no limits on those. So yes, sir.
Commissioner, I
Yes,
think
sir.
his question is really focused on what determines it to be low or medium or moderate
It
quality.
is, well, like tractor ruts, artificially, or man-made impacts, things like that, that would degrade the quality of wetland, because the wetland has several resource values. A lot of the only values that really don't go away are recharge, purification, and it may have low biological quality or something like that. But with respect to flood abatement, purification of waters, things like that. So those will be the categories that will fall in low quality, where they did not have high.
Can you touch on the
biological-
TRAM scoring? I think that may be the direction he was.
the
question was
TRAM
going.
scoring, and I can't speak really well to the TRAM scoring, but that's a measurement of how you go through and you evaluate each of these resource values. You may have an endangered plant species, an endangered animal, maybe in a beautiful state park, maybe in a natural area. Maybe on the other end of it, it may be a wetland that forms in a TDOT road ditch, maybe a wetland that forms behind an agricultural terrace. It may meet the criteria established in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. It has the hydrology, it has the soils, and it has the plants. So I would say a lot in West Tennessee where you have disturbed soils and recontoured soils, there's going to be a lot of those that are going to fall in the lower quality wetland area.
And that TRAM scoring is a TDEC tool.
It is a TDEC tool, yes.
Okay.
And it is open to, I mean, I think we refine that occasionally to get to that point. And you probably used that tool before, Chairman.
Speaker Marsh, any more? Okay. Any other questions for the commissioner? Representative Hardaway?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning.
You're the first commissioner that didn't frown up when I took the mic. Happy to have that kind of relationship with you. Is there such a thing as urban wetlands? And I ask this in response to some observations on the aquifer for Memphis and West Tennessee, quite a bit of West Tennessee, where we get our, I call it Jesus water, since it's 2,000 plus years old.
It is. Yes, there is a such thing as urban wetlands. There are quite a few wetlands in Shelby County. And there's a lot of wetlands across West Tennessee. And yes, a lot of those wetlands do. You made reference to aquifer. So I'm assuming you're asking me what kind of effect do they have? Yeah, we have one of the most prolific aquifers in the world in West Tennessee. And a lot of those wetlands do purify and filter that water as it settles out and goes down into that aquifer.
Representative Hardaway?
Thank you. And the TRAM scoring, is that proprietary TDEC tool, or is that national, or?
Well, I wish I'd have brought some help, some technical help on this, but it is, I know that it's a tool that works in Tennessee and does judge as we move across the state geographically. Our wetlands in East Tennessee are different than our wetlands in West Tennessee. And it does take into account those factors.
Representative Hardaway?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going a little off here, but I sure wish you would get with Chairman Vaughn and get this worked out.
Thank you for that. Representative Ritchie?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner, for being here. Question that I've got when it comes to the actual language that we're seeing inside of the amendment that just came up and TDEC's overall opinion on it. Nobody from TDEC's come over and sat down to share based off of where this amendment is. What's your overall stance on that? And I bring that up because, like a colleague from Hamilton County mentioned over in the Senate, they're doing a true summer study where you commented on that right there. How far away is this amendment from where some of the concerns that your department has, and then what's overall opinion on this particular amendment?
Yeah. Commissioner, if you could put that into context of where the laws are now with what you regulate and pertaining to specifically the question you got about the amendment with, I think.
So there is, first off, let me say, we're in a working with sponsor position. So we're still open to that. With respect to the laws, I mean, the Tennessee Water Quality Control laws, SACIT has to do with the Commerce Clause of the Clean Water Act. The Commerce Clause envisioned that states would make their own water quality control laws, and leaving that to the states to make their determinations. In 1971, actually before the Clean Water Act was passed, the state of Tennessee passed laws to say, here's our statute, here is our water quality laws, here's the public trust doctrine on water. So those have been in place for a while. So that is the foundation of those particular laws. So if we totally, if isolated wetlands is the issue at hand, because basically there was a federal overreach on that. And I think that was played out very clearly in the Supreme Court. Supreme Court decision did not say state adopt federal laws. It said, make your own determinations, on how you want to interpret that. And when you go to West Tennessee, where we have an aquifer, you go to Middle Tennessee, where we have karst features. More people will think of sinkholes and things like that. It's highly variable. So we have to be thoughtful as we look across the different regions of the state of Tennessee as to how things could be impacted and who could be impacted. That's a tough question to answer, but hopefully I've gotten close.
Sure. Okay. Let's do that. Oh, now Speaker Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask your opinion. If we pass this legislation, what harm will be done?
Commissioner.
Let me speak mostly to what I know, and I was executive director of the West Tennessee River Basin Authority, the counties west of the Tennessee River outside of Shelby County, working with landscape modifications over the years where there were modifications to hydrology that went into channels. Some recent channels, some as early as the early 1900s or late 1800s when we settled that country. Any increase in runoff without some type of offsetting abatement causes dramatic effects in the channels in West Tennessee. I spent a career out there. I've taken john boats and airboats up and down the rivers. I've run into gas pipelines. I've run into crude petroleum pipelines. I have gone out and, put grade control structures in to protect bridges, that were recently installed because there was development upstream of that actually caused additional runoff. So the additional runoff caused the channels in West Tennessee to go down and out. Representative Hurt, Cane Creek, hundreds of millions of dollars probably spent in that creek correcting hydrologic changes.
Commissioner, I don't want to interrupt, but I want to clarify what we're dealing with is wetlands. The time frame that you're talking about since 1972, have wetlands been strictly regulated and controlled in those drainage areas you're talking about?
I would say since strictly controlled since 1972, probably not. I think regulations evolved over time as to how they would be controlled. I think that culminated in what is a wetland in 1987 and the U.S. Army's Corps of Engineers manual. So I think that's when really the impacts started to be understood.
And I'm just trying to draw the connection to wetlands with the damages you're talking about, because during the time frame you're talking about, wetlands have been tightly regulated, like you said, since 1971 in the state of Tennessee, and then EPA piled on top of that with even more strict regulations about what you do with wetlands. So the things that we're talking about in this bill have been very heavily regulated in those watersheds. And I would argue that that may not have had an impact because they have been regulated so well and mitigated for in those. So again, just trying to keep us on track with wetlands.
I'll give an example. Jackson, Tennessee, most property built up on top of the hill. As you drive through Jackson, you might think of it as a hill, but it does. It flows off to Middle Fork, Fork of Deer, South Fork, Fork of Deer, developed, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, no regulation whatsoever. In that development that we really didn't know, back at that point in time. But runoff from basically developing those areas, and some of those areas developed in floodplains and wetland areas, caused significant damages downstream prior to regulation. Now, what I'm saying is that these effects will likely not manifest themselves for 10 to 30 years, but they will if there are changes in hydrology that aren't offset.
And the changes in hydrology related to that, the other question I have for you, and somebody else may have this question as well, is what part of our laws or your regulations regulate quantity of water? We regulate quality, but what regulates quantity, which is what you're referring to when you're talking about the amount of runoff?
Okay. So another example, Tipton County, Royster Creek, development upstream of it, Mumford, Atoka. You go downstream, you have a grade control structure at a bridge. You have a beautiful stream upstream of that. You have this massive head cut because you have a grade control structure, massive erosion coming up to that bridge. As it drops and goes through, the water's gone. It goes into a layer below it. The stream disappears. So you go from a nice stream to no stream. And that's also the case a lot in Jackson, Tennessee, on Sandy Creek and Moisey Creek and those creeks. Similar thing where they were once streams and they're no longer streams. So I would argue that is a quality issue.
Okay, I don't know that that answers my question about referring to the exact laws that we have on the books that regulate quantity of water, quantity of runoff.
Yeah, I would say I'm arguing it from that particular standpoint. If stream disappears, the stream is gone.
Okay. I think that may actually get back to a testimony we had from the fellow with Save Our Aquifers, one of the very first hearings we had on this, where he said most of the aquifer recharge comes from the upper reaches of ditches like you're referring to, and the wetlands are actually, their rechargeability of aquifer is a side hustle.
It is,
If I
yeah,
remember
10 to 15%, I would say. And then a lot of that is, and I've installed a lot of aquifer recharge structures up in the Jackson, Sandy Creek watershed when I was executive director up there, where we're trying to reduce flooding and at the same time restore recharge aquifer.
Well, thank you for that. And we don't, there is no law regulating quantity of water or runoff in this state. That's a huge difference in the conversation we're having about wetlands. On our list, we have Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Of course, I've been listening carefully because I know how much this affects part of the district that I represent. And I've seen what happened in Jackson. I've seen some homes actually fall in a creek from what happened with those wetlands over the years. But I did want to ask you, and I'm really concerned here. If you can answer this, where will this put us if we pass this legislation?
Commissioner?
With respect to other
With
states?
respect to what the Senate has done, I'm trying to figure out what good the summer study is going to be, because I don't know if this is going to match what the summer study would come out to be. So can you speak to where this will put us if we pass this out with the Senate having sent their portion summer study?
I think the summer study will allow more stakeholders to be engaged in the process, including members of this committee. So we have a broad spectrum of folks that are having their voices heard, in this, and what is the best thing for the state of Tennessee. We usually get it right. And I think if you have the right people at the right table, we'll come to a decision that this body can support.
You were talking a moment, Chairman, talked to you about the quality of water. I don't know. I think that's maybe a nature issue that I'm not for sure we can make laws on, because Noah, God told him it was going to rain, but he didn't tell him how much. So I'm not for sure we know how to make a law to do that. I think that's an interesting piece, but I do want to just kind of say to this committee, part of this is going to be a nature problem that I'm not for sure we can ever make laws on.
Yeah.
I think we can come as close as we can, but I'm not sure we're going to ever be able to make a law to say this is how much it's going to be. I do know that my district has been highly affected by this, and I want to do the right thing, but I'm very cautious as to how it is done. I just want to make that comment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very welcome. Next, we have Representative Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, there's a balance here. What's good stewardship, what's good policy, what's good growth, and trying to find that happy median right there. It's been talked about the Senate wanting to put a summer study on it and really do a real summer study. I know last year, Chairman Vaughn came in here first week of March, I believe, in the subcommittee, and brought up the fact that this is what he was wanting to work for or work towards. And he spent all summer trying to get somewhere. I don't know what the breakdown was. I'm not saying it's anybody's fault. I know the people that you have working for you are top notch. But we've had the summer study last year, or we had the opportunity to have the summer study. If we didn't get to a point last summer, I mean, there's some things that need to change. There's some things that need to be reviewed, renewed, and changed. And I feel like the last 8 hours we've gone over this in committee this year. I mean, we've done a lot of work. There's been lots of meetings taking place, and I feel like we're getting into a position where we're protecting property rights but yet we're also protecting the environment. And reasonable people can have reasonable disagreements with that. But, the thought about the flooding and all, I've had probably one of the largest flooding events take place in my district this past year under regulations like this. Under the current regulations. I don't think that we can regulate ourselves into doing away with flooding issues. I believe God's still in control regardless what we want. We may have desires, we may have wishes, but God's still in control, and we're eventually going to have to take some of our hands off and say, all right, God, you're in control, and we're just going to let you do what's best, even though we may not understand it at that time. That's maybe more of a statement, but
Comment to that?
absolutely.
Sure, Commissioner.
Yeah, and I do think, and it's not that, and certainly if we have, super huge storm events, there's going to be flooding. There's floodplains. There's going to be flooding. This bill will not do away with flooding in any way, shape, or form. But I will say that small changes over time change the character. I mean, let's just say it rains a certain amount, and we have 2 billion gallons of water dropped on an area. How quickly does that $2 billion gallons of water run off? What is the nature of that runoff? Does it run off very quickly, like we see in West Tennessee a lot, where your stream will rise this quick, this fast?
Sure.
And there's a lot of shear stresses in there. The soils out there can't withstand that. And I think, I think the thing is that truly, what we have seen historically is that infrastructure gets threatened. And sometimes if you're not smart about the way you do things, some taxpayers are going to pay in the future to stabilize that infrastructure. And it really has to do with the nature of the runoff. And you can increase the volume of runoff if I move upstream of you and I have 100 acres and I pave it all. I'm gonna cause some effects on you downstream. I mean, none of it's going to soak into the ground. A lot of it's going to run off, and I'm going to change the nature of that channel. I may fill it full of sediment. I may make threaten your home because I've caused more bank erosion. So there are things that are there technically, and it's not easy to understand. I mean, it's taken me years to where I feel like I fully understand this as an engineer and a geologist, and working with these scenarios. So it is hard. It is hard. So the nature is what changes. I'd be thrilled to come to your office and show you stream hydrographs. It really excites me and is interesting. You'll probably be bored pretty quick, but.
Chairman Todd. Okay. You brought up the fact of the 100 acres you're going to pave. If you were to pave that 100 acres, would there not be some type of mitigation though? Because this is not a wetland that you're paving necessarily. This would be a general permit that you would be operating under, which would have certain criteria built into it.
There are
There'd
certain,
be, catch basins and things of that nature to alleviate the stress downstream. Would that be correct?
there are, if a community reaches a certain size, you'll drive around Nashville, you drive around Memphis, Chattanooga, and you see these little basins and rain gardens and things like that. That's because they're classified as MS4 cities, municipal separate storm sewer systems. So it's recognized in those big communities that you want to detain and allow that water release slowly for a variety of reasons, not just flooding. It has to do with, I won't get into the wastewater discharge aspects of it, but in communities that are small, they do not have those municipal MS4 requirements in place. And I think about places in and around Blue Oval City, where most of those communities are small, and a lot of development is going to be taken very quickly over the next 4 to 5 years. So those would not be required to be built into those, whatever development goes on.
I think we've kind of gotten off of the wetlands zone and got over into
Mhm.
other things. So
I'll stop there.
Well, okay, Representative Vital.
This is for the commissioner, just to clarify, but there would be no permit for mitigation of low classified wetlands, correct?
That is my understanding of 1054 as is written.
Okay.
And we did offer some offsets of, or we're working, I think we agreed on some offsets on moderate, where you would have a little bit of detention, whatever you offset there.
Representative Vital.
I was just trying to get a clarification on Chairman Grills' conversation on mitigation and runoff, because that is an important issue, especially in the rural areas. Thank you.
Representative Travis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner, for being here today. I know you've had enjoyed this also. So, if by chance last year it fell through the cracks and we didn't really come together and make this work, if they were a summer study like the Senate's pushed, is this going to change the department on how you meet with Representative or Chairman Bond in the coming months for the next year go around? Do you see that as a possibility from your department to do that and to make that work?
Changing in the way, yes, sir, we're, there were conversations, there were emails, there were things back and forth. Last year, I know we pulled back toward the end of the year in talking about this because there were other things in play. We knew there was a permitting bill that was coming about. I think by the way, I like that bill a lot. I think it's very good. That really takes some of the decision-making out of our department hands and allows others to do so. I know we re-engaged, I can't tell you how many different unofficial amendments went back and forth. I know I spoke with Chairman Baum once in January, I believe, and we tried to get to a place. And like you said, we're close. I think the main thing is on the low quality wetlands, the acreage amount was where I wasn't uncomfortable. I got in a spot where I had the NGOs mad at me and I had other folks mad felt like I was in a sweet spot as commissioner of TDOT. I had the environmental communities upset and then maybe the development community upset. So it's trying to answer it. That's the best I can do, sir.
Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Oh, and you mentioned, Commissioner, emails and all that. I think we're beyond the email section. I think it's probably sitting down with a group of people. We put a task force together and this group meets and lock the doors and orders lunch or whatever and don't come out until something is agreed upon to bring toward this committee. That's my ideal to satisfy this.
Yes, sir. We'll
this
do it.
issue.
I wasn't engaged last March. I didn't get engaged on this until January. Perhaps I should have been engaged sooner. But nevertheless, I made that commitment to the Senate and I'm going to do it. I'm going to keep my word. We're going to sit down.
You're committed.
We're committed. I don't think I could sit here and guarantee one way or the other if this group comes together and agrees on something, and then at that point, the body would have to act. But we're committed to work together, reasonable people coming up with reasonable solutions that are good for the state of Tennessee.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I would remind the committee that the department is part of the administration and they administer policy that we pass. So they are providing scientific background and scientific information to us and how legislation would affect their department. That is their role in this, and we appreciate their involvement up to this point to provide that scientific information. I don't have anybody else on the list, but I had a couple of questions for clarification, if you would allow. You mentioned the development in some of the communities you named a while ago. So what is, in your opinion, is the runoff capacity control, flood control of a wooded area, a forested area?
Yeah, I think forested areas provide a lot of control. They capture water on the leaves. There's organic matter underneath. They do capture that. Yes.
What about a pasture area?
Less than a forested area.
Okay. Do we regulate in the state the runoff from a quantity standpoint, flood mitigation standpoint of either one of those types of properties?
We do not. The Natural Resources Conservation Service, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, recognized years ago that heavy sediment erosion coming off of these features. That's why we have agricultural terraces. That's why we have no-till farming. That's why they have cattle panel grade control structures. That's why they have stormwater detention structures. That's why they have black pipes dropping down behind these agricultural terraces, because they recognize the importance of controlling that. If I may go back up.
And I'm just drilling down on regulations and laws. That's really where my focus is.
I'll go back. I'm gonna channel somebody who was a lieutenant governor for a number of years and was from West Tennessee, Lieutenant Governor Wilder. Quite the character. Many of y'all would remember, but I can remember him talking to me once early in my career and describing to me why they did that. I'm going to try to channel his voice, and I'm going to try not to go into the cosmos. All due respect to the man, I loved him. So, Director Salyers, we took that water and we taught that water how to walk down that hill instead of run down that hill. And really, he had a beautiful way of putting things when it was like, and that was really what the Soil Conservation Service and the districts did. And I sat there in committees with him, and he said, them boys done forgot what a cotton patch was. He was a big farmer. But that summed it up. And so there are other entities out there. The Natural Resources Conservation Service puts more money into conservation practices and teaching that water to walk down.
But Commissioner, my focus is on laws and regulations. And you have touched on an area in the federal realm that is more encouragement and incentives. They don't regulate that. They don't require any of that unless you take their money, take their incentives. So I'm literally talking about laws and regulations related to quantity of runoff from wooded areas or pasture areas or grass areas. Are there any?
No, sir, there
Thank
are
you.
not.
Thank you. That's what I'm trying to get to here, because if we want to go down a road of regulating the quantity of water that's running off, that is a significant and huge policy change for this state. And I don't think our citizens want us to go in that direction. Once they do, then we'll have that conversation. But that is not part of the regulations and laws we have in place right now. And I just want to make sure that I wasn't incorrect on that.
I defer to this body, and that is what y'all do. We execute on laws. I'm going to sit here and tell you the truth of what I believe to be the effects, of policy decisions, and you do it you need.
Thank you, Commissioner. Representative Shaw, circle back with you, sir. Oh, okay. Representative, did I see Representative Hardaway's hand? You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. You probably gonna start frowning next time you show up, sir. Because I'm concerned. You said, I think you said pull back, or your department pulled back on conversations with Chairman Vaughn a few months ago. And I know how I would feel if you, quote, pulled back on talking to me as a legislator. I would feel some kind of way. And I feel some kind of way because you treated another legislator like that. So I'm curious as to whether you're going to be more motivated to sit down and have serious conversations about some type of resolution to the differences if we pass this bill out to finance and you see what the position of the committee is as a whole. Are you committed?
I am.
Or are you going to pull back again?
Well, I'm totally committed. As I said, we had negotiated sometime after the Sackett decision, or not to get talked. I know we submitted amendments, and then we knew there was a third party bill that was coming out, which I thought was very favorable to the development community and the industrial community that does permit these types of issues all the time. Blue Oval City, for example. Yeah, I'm fully committed. That's all I know how to say it.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate your help with us with this issue today. Next on the list, I have Miss Grace Stranch, the Harpeth Conservancy. I think the microphone may still be on. If you see a red light, you're good to go. So introduce yourself. You'll have 3 minutes, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for allowing me to speak on how wetlands impact rivers. My name is Grace Stranch. I'm the CEO of Harpeth Conservancy, a nonpartisan nonprofit that's science-based, that's vision is clean water, healthy ecosystems for rivers in Tennessee, championed by those who live here. I'm also a Tennessee native who grew up on a farm in Bellevue. In Tennessee, our rivers are a part of the third most aquatically biodiverse hotspots in the world. Unfortunately, 60% of our rivers don't meet federal water quality standards. And this matters because 60% of our drinking water comes from our rivers. Globally, around 10% of the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico is attributable to nutrients from Tennessee rivers. Our wetlands and our rivers are intertwined, especially when it comes to water quality. Our wetlands naturally filter pollutants such as heavy metals, contaminants, leads, and even emerging contaminants such as PFAS, PFOAs, and microplastics. Removing wetlands eliminates our natural filtration system, causing increased costs to utilities that maintain the same level of drinking water quality. These costs are then shifted to our ratepayers. We, as ratepayers, end up paying more money for the same water quality that we had naturally. We are already number 6 in the US for water affordability concerns. We should not lightly burden our most vulnerable with these costs. Many of our wetlands that are considered isolated under this bill are in fact connected by groundwater. In Middle Tennessee and East Tennessee, our porous limestone results in water seeping down, forming these underground connections. It's why we have the most caves in the whole US in Tennessee. And in West Tennessee, our streams interplay with our wetlands to recharge the aquifer. Throughout Tennessee, our wetlands play important roles of water storage, impact river flow rates, they lower erosion and flooding issues, and they provide water for farmers for irrigation and in times of drought. We have already lost 60% of our wetlands in Tennessee. Our rivers cannot handle losing 55% more, especially if we don't have mitigation. This amendment should not be reviewed, only consider the savings of one industry, savings that are not generally actually passed down to private homeowners and often impact homeowners down the street. We should consider the billion-dollar outdoor recreation industry, the restoration, the flooding, the economic cost of flooding, and the cost of actual lives from flooding. Please do not make a rush decision. I hope that you will send this to summer study. Too much is at stake to let this go through. Our growth does not have to come at the expense of Tennessee's natural heritage. It is truly possible to have both. And I also want to say, I used to practice utility law, so I have experience in that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Stranch. Any questions for our guests? Representative Harris?
Thank you, Chairman, and to the speaker. If you mentioned something about farmland, can you tell me what the impact to farmland would be under this legislation?
So right now, farmland is already exempt from this type of mitigation. If you have a farm and you want to do things to your wetlands, have at it. You're already exempt from this law. But many farmers rely on the irrigation and drought. And also, this would impact this doesn't impact farmers when farmers are actually out there farming. What this could impact is when farmers sell their land. But in Tennessee, are we farming buildings? Or are we farming agriculture? And I have these statistics which I think are really important. From 2017 to 2022, Tennessee lost 432,941 acres of farmland converted to other uses, which is a loss rate of 86,588 acres a year, 237 acres a day, and 9 acres an hour. I think it's really important before we do something that would potentially create incentive to lose more of this farmland that we protect. And if we are going to lose our farmland, the least we can do is pay the mitigation costs that all of us as taxpayers will be paying. Someone will be paying these costs if it's not mitigated. And I don't think it should be us and our communities if we're going to have these losses. Thank you.
Representative Harris, any follow-up? Okay. Anyone else on the committee? Representative Hardaway?
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, ma'am. Your comments about the isolated wetlands, how will the urban areas figure into that system?
I think it'll depend on a lot of different factors. So when we say isolated, I just want to reiterate that all of us think of isolated as not connected to anything in the definition if you just look up the common layperson. But isolated here just means it's not connected on the surface. So in these cities that have these underground connections, if you don't have these specific rules in place for mitigation, then you'll have to look to the specific regulations in those areas. So some cities will have stricter regulations And others, a lot of the rural areas won't have any regulations. And I do want to note on that we talked about TEMA taking care of this in the past. And I want to note that TEMA is not a regulatory agency. They come in on the pass. The same with MS4s, which some of these cities have MS4s that will account for some of these consequences, but they can't account for all of it. These MS4s that were discussed earlier by Commissioner are usually only a small subset of the watershed. So if there are issues happening upstream from the city, for instance, and it's not captured in that MS4, then we don't have those protections to mitigate for the flooding and other issues. And without having these mitigation protections, there will be no protections when it comes to flooding and potential water quality. Again, that the utilities in large enough numbers are going to have to do different things with their systems and have to use more resources. Again, that goes back to the ratepayers. So I just want to say we end up paying those costs at the end of the day.
Ms. Trench, I appreciate you being here. We've got one more guest that's on the list to testify. So thank you so much for your time. We have Kevin Hensley with the Farm Bureau. Mr. Hensley, just make sure the mic's on and introduce yourself, please. You'll have 3 minutes.
Chairman. Kevin Hensley, Tennessee Farm Bureau Federation, Director of Public Policy. And want to start off by thanking this committee for putting in the hard work and the subcommittee to have this conversation ongoing. I want to thank the sponsor. He's been working on this legislation since last year. We had very similar conversations in this committee and in the subcommittee last year and about what we should do. And we appreciate his work on that. I want to thank TDEC and the commissioner. We've had conversations ongoing since last year to talk about what we should do about this issue. I think from our perspective, much of the concerns in this legislation and what we're talking about are obviously around development. And so much of the bill are not an issue that Farm Bureau is actually involved in the big amendment that we're talking about, but there are some key policy issues when it comes to this issue that we have been engaged in this topic throughout the past year about helping this bill move forward. And many of those technical questions around development are questions that I would not be able to answer. But I think from a big picture perspective, this bill is about private property rights. And so we've been helping in the background, trying to keep this conversation going around updating our state law in light of what changes have happened at the federal level, and the nuance that happens up here, and how we make policy. I believe the chairman started off kind of over here with his amendment, and the current law and TDEC have started off over here, and we've been working throughout session to come to a compromise legislation. And I think from our position, that's where we've been, of trying to get this committee to a compromise legislation to work out and get this bill across the finish line. There's been concern about farmland loss, and we share those concerns, and we think Chairman Gross has got legislation that helps discuss that, and that's not a part of this conversation in our minds. There's been a lot of questions about, how much hydrologic connection there may be to aquifers and things like that. That's obviously a concern, but I do want to note that the amendment that we've worked on and has been worked on throughout this process has been about when no regulation comes into effect, we're talking about times that there is limited hydrologic connection. And emphasize that when you look into the amendment that's been worked on, you're limiting the hydrologic connection. And then finally, in the few moments that I have, I want to mention that there's been a lot of talk about flood abatement concerns and things like that, that's currently not in the state law. And from our perspective, having some language potentially that would be adding that to the Tennessee Water Quality Control Act. Again, I want to emphasize that. Tennessee Water Quality Control Act, that from a precedent level standpoint, to take that position and talk about flood abatement in the law changes the Tennessee Water Quality Control Act to somehow being the Tennessee Water Quantity Control Act. And that's a huge shift in policy for the state. And so any conversation around that is something we'd be a little concerned about. And again, we're not the ones that asked the chairman to bring this bill or anything like that. We've just been at the table for the past year. And I think kind of to wrap up, we've just encouraged the committee to keep the conversation going. And again, we appreciate all the work that you guys have done. The chairman has done. Thank TDEC and other partners for being a part of this conversation. And we want to continue the conversation this General Assembly.
Thank you, Mr. Hensley. Appreciate your time. And we're running really short on time. So thank you again. I don't have anybody on the list, but thank you for your comments. Without objection, we're going to go back into session. We're back in session. Representative Vaughn, you're recognized on House Bill 1054 as amended.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was so much that I wish I could have rebutted to at the time. As old as I am, I forget some of, but it's interesting when we started talking about wetlands and quickly went into stream channelization and hydrological impacts. This bill has nothing to do with touching streams. We talked about, this is about reducing government interaction and oversight from TDEC, and I'll be dadgummed if they haven't figured out a way how to increase their scope and they're trying to grab onto flooding and water quantity now. If that's not the essence of how bureaucracy works and what we're fighting against here, I don't know what else is. We're talking about letting people use their property and not having to pay a third-party group. Folks, this is one of the reasons why you've been inundated with folks is because there's a lot of folks here wanting to save this planet and also put a lot of money in their pocket selling mitigation credits. That's just part of the way it is. And I understand that. And so I would just ask, I think I just want to know who else has the concerns about the erosion of private property rights within our state. We have a chance to fix it. We have a chance to move the needle. And I don't know if there's the political will to, but I do know that I have it. And, that's about all I can say is that, and one thing about flooding, just so you know, I've heard flooding, wetlands, self-flooding. By definition, a wetland is saturated soil. During a rain event, rain does not permeate into saturated soil, it runs off. So you'll see releases from wetlands quicker than you do forests or quicker than you do from pasture lands. It's common sense. Nobody on grading plans, any type of development plans, do you get a single ounce of storage credit for a wetland? You have to put in detention facilities. And so there's a lot of smoke and mirrors thrown at you saying, the sky's going to fall, the sky's going to fall. You know what's going to fall? What's going to fall is the amount of regulations that private property owners have to put up with and the cost that they've got to do when they try to use their land and be good stewards of it. And that, Mr. Chairman, y'all can tell I'm fired up. I do not need to say something that I regret. And so I'm just going to hold right there.
Thank you for that, Representative.
One last thing, though, I've got to say, is we had 1 year of summer study and there was no study.
Thank you for that. We are up against a hard stop. Representative Ritchie.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Without objection, we're adjourned.